Can stress cause disease? Well, not to stress you out, but we're not entirely sure. However, if you were to ask if stress could be a key ingredient in the development and acceleration of disease, the data would yell from the mountaintops. Assuming it found a LLM with a scientific background and voice capabilities, of course. You bet your ass it can. And this latest study we're going to review today only adds to the evidence. This time as it pertains to public enemy numero uno, cancer. Here's what you need to know. Yo, what is up? Welcome back to another week of How to Health. My name is Kevin. I run liftinbalance.com, where we take aim at all things health and longevity and do it in an odd, weird, interesting, and highly sarcastic way. Now listen, we've all been there before. Heart beginning to race, pits starting to sweat, breath after breath getting shorter and faster, adrenaline and cortisol pumping superhuman alertness and energy into your veins, all while a stench grows in abundance in the confines of your undergarments. Okay, maybe not that last part, even though it would be a great deterrent. All of this happening not because you are in any danger, but because you read a text, tweet, email, post, article that triggered an emotional, perceived threat which swung your survival response into action. This is the modern day threat landscape we face. And if you don't find a way to deal with it, the data suggests that your health will be the one that suffers. And I think right about now is a good time to take a pause and take a breath. Because if you find yourself in this camp, you're not alone. As it's estimated that up to 50% of the population deals with some form of chronic stress on a regular basis, which makes one wonder, especially with the prevalence of chronic disease being up and to the right only over the last few decades. Could it be the cause? Huh? What was that? We already answered that. Well, let's give them a little more detail. Because chronic stress, or the chronic upregulation of the fight or flight response, has been shown to impact the body through a number of different health-altering mechanisms, including increased stress hormone secretion, the uptick of chronic inflammation, and immune dysregulation, which, surprisingly, happens to be associated with a pretty ugly list of conditions. We're talking cardiovascular dysfunction, diabetes and obesity, mental health disorders, digestive disturbances, respiratory dysfunction, chronic pain, autoimmune disorders, neurodegenerative disease, and public enemy number one, cancer, which, as you know, happens to be the topic today. But before we get there, I hope you're seeing that this trend is not your friend. And although managing your stress may not mitigate your risk altogether, because nothing will, it can remove a key ingredient for its acceleration. Something that this new, first of its kind animal study gives us a pretty interesting view into. Let's take a look. Researchers out of UCLA sought to explore if and how stress attributed to the development and acceleration of one of the most deadly types of pancreatic cancers. To do this, they used a model of mice who were genetically prone to the disease and observed the effects of a high-fat diet on the pancreas. Not surprisingly, finding that this way of eating led to the formation of precancerous pancreatic lesions. Okay, strike one for ultra-processed eating. However, what they found next was the truly eye-opening part. While continuing to eat a high-fat diet, they isolated a subset of these mice to invoke a chronic stress environment, finding that this stressor alone was enough to accelerate the development of even more advanced lesions at a much faster pace compared to mice who were only eating the high-fat diet. Interestingly, finding that the social isolation had a much bigger impact on cancer development for female mice compared to male mice. And when they looked under the covers for the pathways involved, they observed that the increase in stress-related neurotransmitters and obesity-related hormones led to the activation of a protein called CREB, or CREB, which has previously been linked to cancer growth. You don't say. All in all, they concluded their data implies that chronic stress cooperates with diet-induced obesity to accelerate the development of pancreatic cancer, adding to a growing body of research that chronic stress is not ideal for your longevity ambitions. Now, I must remind you that this study was in our cheese-loving friends, and the translation to humans is generally not one-to-one. But this certainly gives us a damn good reason to be wary of the stress effect, and reinforces that it's probably a good idea to deploy some healthy stress management. And ironically, one of the best ways to do that is to proactively stress yourself out in a good way. And if that's not making any sense to you, chill out. We have an entire video dedicated to discussing how to defeat chronic stress with planned good stress. It'll be linked in the show notes below if you want access to this permanent chill pill. Because the facts of the matter are, most people don't realize that how you live your life dramatically influences your propensity to get stressed out in the first place. Yeah, when and what you eat, how you sleep, the activity you do, the products you use, the medications you take, the nature you interact with, and a whole lot more all play into your master stress equation. And the reality is, it's rare for someone to live a healthy life in all of those regards and be a totally stressed out mess of an individual. Not impossible, but rare. Because those healthy lifestyle habits, when done consistently, make it biochemically harder to become stressed out in the first place, stimulating the release of feel-good, blood vessel dilating, inflammation fighting, mind calming hormones, which hang around in prevalence the more you carry out these healthy activities. While the modern Western norms of ultra-processed eating, extreme sedentary behaviors, deprived, disaligned sleep, chemicals galore, and severe nature deficits do the opposite. They feed into the uptick of chronic stress. But not only that, in parallel drive all those other conditions like obesity, diabetes, chronic inflammation, and cancer, which the stress response likes to piggyback onto and accelerate the damage. Not cool. I know. And just to really drive this point home, let me give you a little example of just how vicious this cycle of dysfunction can be. Say you are an average, intelligent walking ape following a standard Western lifestyle. This would mean that you're eating a diet abundant in ultra-processed foods to the tune of 50 to 60% of total calories. Little do you know that these ultra-processed foods are not only associated with an increased risk of metabolic dysfunction, but also impaired sleep quality. And as we know from all the deep dives on the legendary fully loaded How to Sleep playlist, chronically impaired deprived sleep messes with the biological function of basically every bodily system that we have. One of the ways it does this is by increasing the activity of the hypothalamic pituitary adrenal axis and the prevalence of stress hormones throughout the body, aka chronic stress. And guess what? One of the byproducts of increased stress hormone activity in the brain is a modification of activity, which leads to the increased desire to snack on fresh fruit and veggies. No, I'm just kidding. Ultra processed foods. The same foods that will, drumroll please, impair sleep quality once again and start this vicious cycle all over the next day. This is what I mean when I say unhealthy habits compound on each other like interest in the morbidity bank. But the good news for all of us is healthy habits have the same compounding effect, happily in the other direction. So the decision to break the cycle and take back control lies with you, as you can very much influence your body's cellular, metabolic, and biochemical activity through the lifestyle that you live, and thus its propensity for triggering the stress response, putting yourself in a more difficult but not impossible physiological and biochemical position to get stressed out in the first place. Now, if you're wondering how exactly Much of this prevention comes through honing in on the foundational components of health and longevity, including high quality circadian aligned sleep, eating real whole nourishing foods, moving your badonkadonk on the daily, and spending more time in nature, the environment that we have deep biological ties to. Because it's these habits which have been shown to balance natural cortisol cycles, upregulate the parasympathetic rest and digest nervous system, stimulate the dilation of blood vessels, relax the cardiovascular system, increase the secretion of mood boosting, pain relieving, and stress reducing bioactive compounds such as opioids, endocannabinoids, and endorphins, improve microdiversity, enhance brain function, and lower overall inflammation levels, all while optimizing detoxification pathways in the process. Now, it's also important to note that this prevention is only a piece of the stress reduction equation. As we discussed in this video here, being able to identify when your stress response is triggered and also being able to de-stress yourself in the moment are key components to a holistic strategy. And they just don't happen overnight. It takes work, a plan, and many repetitions, all for a imperfect result, might I add, because perfection doesn't exist here, but becoming a better observer and manager of your mind does. So I encourage you to check out that video, which I will link in the show notes below if you want a full walkthrough. And please, if you have any stress management magic habits that have worked for you, please share them in the comments below, because getting healthy together is what it's all about. Lastly, if you leave this powwow with anything, the important message to take away is that stress management should be right up there on your list of healthy to-dos, with eating real food, getting good high quality sleep, and moving your ass, because it is a silent accelerator of disease. And the stress triggering landscape has never been wider due to the 24/7 digital world that we live in. So make it a priority. Keep it top of mind in a good way. And remember, when you're scrolling, there is nothing so serious that you should allow it to take healthy years away from you. I mean, just look what happened when Happy Gilmore dropped the anger and went to his happy place.
Now, how do you feel? Better.
You can't argue with that, science. Go touch some grass.